Hey, welcome to another edition of the Chiefs Outsiders podcast. And these are always the most fun shows coming off of a Chiefs win. Although this is definitely kind of a mixed bag in terms of we saw some good things. We saw the Chiefs beat a team that was a first place team on a win streak. And we saw a few things that weren't as good, which is certain types of teams. Really, the Tennessee Titans are the epitome of a team that gives the Chiefs trouble, which is teams that just play tough and physical and limit possessions.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this is. It gets talked about so much that you almost get sick of hearing it about how this team embodies the mindset of the head coach and just really plays like a Mike Vrabel football team. But it's true. And they just want to beat you up and drag you down to their level, and that's what happened.
Yeah, and so Kansas City has had this reputation of being kind of a soft or fancy or, like they call them like the Golden State Warriors, that it's all flashy and it's fun and it's exciting, and that the way you beat that is by being the opposite. And everything that Tennessee needed to happen happened, and they still lost.
Yeah. Truly, though, this had all of the hallmarks of a painful Chiefs loss, from a bad drop on a third down to a drop that turned into an interception to missed kicks to, at times, an inability to stop the run.
I would like to see the numbers, and I haven't seen it anywhere. Maybe it's not what I'm expecting, but it feels like Kansas City has been struggling for years with the AFC South.
Yeah.
It's the Colts,
The Titans, the Texans even.
Yeah, it's been, and that's not been great teams mostly. Now, the Titans have been owning the Chiefs for the last few years, except the one game that mattered to go to the Super Bowl. But outside of that game, the Titans have owned the Chiefs, and it's been kind of a case of styles make fights, and that style of football, limit possessions, run the ball, play great defense, has worked. And when I say Tennessee, if you made a list of everything that needed to happen, they got all of it. They were completely unable to sustain drives. They needed to break like 3 or 4 plays, because that's all that offense could even try to do. And they got that in timely manners. They only had like 2 drives, and they got touchdowns out of them. So they had to cash in every trip into the red zone had to be a touchdown. They had to win the turnover battle. They needed us to miss kicks and have crucial penalties. And even after all that, it didn't matter, because we completely shut down their offense.
Right. Yeah, it's the stat that's everywhere, today is they had 1 first down after the 5-minute mark in the second quarter. And that's, you can say whatever you want about a rookie backup quarterback and an offense that isn't stacked with weapons, but, in the NFL, a win is a win, and all of these guys are good,
And Malik Willis looked like he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to stand back there, read a defense, and handle all the things that a sophisticated NFL defense does to you. But the footballs that he threw were all good throws, and they weren't completed for the most part because we had excellent coverage on those plays.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a tough test for our defensive backs as far as, they had a tough job tackling, but it wasn't a tough coverage game because the Titans' offense is inept.
They only got challenged a few times throughout the entire game.
But you've got to give credit to the Chiefs' defense. You can't just write the whole thing off to the young quarterback, because we had a lot of plays where they're trying to run the ball in the second half and they weren't able to.
Yeah, and we saw just last week that Derrick Henry practically beat an NFL team by himself. Again, I understand the Texans they're not world beaters, but whenever you go and you beat a professional football team with one player doing 90% of the heavy lifting, that's an impressive task. Like that's hard to do.
Yep. So the defense, if you start after that second touchdown, the rest of the game they were an A+. In 2/3 of a football game, the Titans had 1 first down. And that's ridiculously effective. And even looking at the entire game, really the Titans had 3 plays. Willis had 80 yards passing. 50 of it was on a catch and run where there were 4 guys around the ball carrier and everyone thought someone else had him. And
it was a screen on the very first play of the game.
You take that away, they had 32 yards passing. So you have to give the defense credit for what they did. You also have to give the Titans defense credit because the Titans defense looked fantastic. I mean, Simmons was blowing up the center of the line. We saw him get a double team on a play that could have won the game towards the end. We had Hardman open. Mahomes saw it and was throwing on time. Would have put us like inside the 10 in regulation. And Simmons was double teamed. He split it. He was held, and he still got a hand on it.
Yeah.
They have a tough defensive line, and they owned the line of scrimmage. We couldn't run the ball. And you got to give credit to the Titans defense. And they also had some lucky breaks because we had that stretch where Kansas City couldn't score.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds bad. And, that's how football works because you just have 3 plays,
Yep.
To get a first down. But there were a lot of fluky situations there. Like the ball to Kelce, it was a 3-yard pass. I'd say completion percentage on Mahomes to Kelce for 3 yards is pretty high. Ends in an interception.
The next-gen stats on that one, it was like the 7th time in the last 2 seasons that Mahomes has thrown an interception on a pass that had a completion probability higher than like 86% or something.
Yeah, so that's a fluky thing. And there was a play where we were driving and we hit a long pass on a 3rd down to Kelce. We were going to be like down to the 35-yard line, moving into scoring position. Andrew Wiley had a hold that didn't affect the play. There was felt like that was another case of the Titans getting some breaks.
Yeah.
And Chris Jones lining off sides was a 4-point penalty. We missed 2 kicks. We gave him 8 points right there. Everything went the Titans' way. I thought a lot of the officiating went the Titans' way. There were several plays where they jumped off sides and they didn't call it.
Yeah, at least there were 2 in the first quarter that were clearly offsides and they didn't get called. And I've said this multiple times this season, I felt like even removing all of my bias from it, even counting plays that I felt like could have been penalties on the Chiefs and weren't called or were missed or any number of things. This was just a poorly officiated game. And I feel like I've said that too many times this year. But going back to the Titans defense, and although he never coached under Belichick, he obviously Vrabel played for him for probably close to a decade. I don't know the exact number of years, and a lot of that philosophy comes from that. And those are the only 2 guys in the entire league that have consistently given Mahomes and Kelce problems. And this Titans team specifically, we saw a level of frustration out of Kelce early in that game that I don't remember seeing since he was a young player, 6-7 years ago.
Yep. And just going back to what I was saying about what it took to hold us to that low of a scoring output, we also had a 3rd down where Smith-Schuster was clearly interfered with. So it only takes one thing to end a drive, and they got a lot of one thing type of drive-ending plays that, I don't think anyone feels like if we played this game again, we're being held to that point output.
Right. And that's kind of what I started off. I used the phrase that they drag you down to their level. And I don't mean that as in the Titans are some bad team, but just that I said it to you earlier. Early on, they are sending the message that they are going to be overly physical on every single play because they know you can't penalize them on every single play. And that's why you're seeing Travis Kelce be so frustrated, because he feels like, and he's right, that he's being held and grabbed and chipped and thrown on every single play, and he's not getting any calls because you can't just penalize the team on every play.
So we saw some other things that were interesting. Let's Kadarius Toney getting involved in the game.
Mm-hmm.
I did not expect to see him as much as we did. We saw Mecole Hardman do a good job as a punt returner. We saw that, I think, if it wasn't for the fact we have the best tight end in the league who needs to be a focal point, I think Noah Gray could be a legitimate contributor. I think we saw a lot of good things in an offensive performance that wasn't overall as good as we're used to.
Yeah, Noah Gray absolutely made, inarguably, one of the 2 or 3 biggest plays in this game that secured the field goal in overtime. Obviously, you would have liked to get a touchdown there and in the game, but that took them down inside the 30, I believe. I think a little bit closer than that. And other than that, he had another big catch on the game-tying drive on a 2nd and 10 or a 3rd and 10, where Mahomes hung in the pocket and found him late over the middle. And I think he's really starting to grow in that second tight end role.
Yep, we saw Mahomes obviously finding a way on running the ball.
Mm-hmm.
We saw some great downfield blocking. We saw Noah Gray, McKinnon, Toney.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of effort plays to pick up those blocks. So there were a lot of good things from the offense, and it was just 3 or 4 times we had that one play that killed a drive. But overall, you got to give credit to the defense. And that's, the Titans were in the AFC Championship game. Then the next year, they're the number 1 seed. Then this year, they come in on a 5-game winning streak. This is not a bad football team.
Yeah.
And it's a good win. And it's the kind of game you have to win throughout a season when things don't go your way.
Nick Wright was saying today about how a lot of people look down on this Titans team because of their style of play and other various reasons. But over the last 3 seasons, this Titans team has accomplished the exact same things that the Bills have. They have lost a title game. They've lost in the divisional round. The Titans have been a number 1 seed, and the Bills haven't. This is a team over the last 4 or 5 years that has had a sustained run of success and came into this game hot and played a good game and still lost.
Yep. And all the hypothetical, what if Tannehill had played? Well, maybe he throws 3 picks. We don't know what would have happened if Tannehill had played. And I know that he wouldn't have ran those zone reads. That is what worked on their scoring drives.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, these are the types of games you got to go in and win ugly. And we go from starting the season by playing 8 teams in a row that had a winning record the year before to now going into a stretch of the season where we only play 2 or 3 teams with a winning record the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And a lot of winnable games and a lot of everything that this team's looking for, despite the loss to the Bills, it's all still right there on the table.
Yeah, and also I want to talk about specifically the D line in this game, especially in the second half. Colin Saunders, really most of the fourth quarter, was consistently flashing an ability to win in the run and pass game quickly, and that sack he had was. I mean, he's a big man, and that was an impressive display of athleticism to close that gap. Like, because we were just looking at it, and we paused it, and at the time he gets free, he is the 3rd closest guy to the ball. Dunlap and Dana were both 3.5 yards closer to the quarterback than him, and he comes shooting across both of them and makes the play. And he had made a play like on the first down of that series and then made several other run stops earlier in the quarter.
He shot through like a missile, and I'm like, did Willie Gay put on weight? Wait, that's Colin Saunders.
Yeah, and I think George Karlaftis had a really strong game in the run game especially, and had a few really impressive pass rush wins. Chris Jones does what he always does and had some dominant moments late in the game. Carlos Dunlap had a sack and a half to put him at 99.5 for his career.
I think the possibility is there that this could be the best defense Kansas City's had since the Super Bowl.
And
When that defense wasn't good in the first half of the season, it was a very effective defense in the second half of the season. I like the Chiefs' personnel better this year.
And we talked about it in the middle of the week, or I guess it was right after the trade deadline, and just in the overall a little disappointment with the fact they didn't address pass rush. But even if they had made a move at the deadline, the Chiefs' best chance in the back half of the year for massive improvement on the defensive side of the ball was in their first 2 picks, with Trent McDuffie coming back off of injury and George Karlaftis getting more comfortable in the NFL and getting more snaps under his belt. And we saw Trent McDuffie only get targeted twice in this game. Again, it was a limited passing game, but he got targeted twice, didn't allow a completion, and Karlaftis did a lot of good things.
I love small sample sizes, and I just wanted to share the stat that in games that Trent McDuffie starts and finishes, the team is not only undefeated, but we're allowing an average of 80 passing yards per game.
Yeah.
And if that continues,
That'll play.
yeah, if that stat continues as it has been, I see us in the Super Bowl again.
And then we haven't even talked about Mahomes in this. And, you never really want to have a Texas Tech kind of stat line with 68 pass attempts on over 70 dropbacks. But, I mean, this is the definition of an over my dead body game and just refusing to let this team lose.
And I think there have been times when I thought you have to try to run the ball to, make them respect it. It was evident that they didn't have to stack against the run to stop us from running.
Mm-hmm.
We were not going to run the ball that day on that front. And so if it's not going to work, what's the point in getting an extra 10 carries for 14 yards instead of giving Mahomes a chance to do what he does?
Yeah.
So in this exact game only, I think it was right to abandon the run.
Yeah.
And Mahomes was fantastic when he had to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's another great win. And I think that's about all I had on it. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking time to watch, and we'll see you on the next one.
Sounds good.